much for joining us today for a webinar on driving a high-performance culture with Vitor Hugo Cid. My name is Catherine, and I'm the U.S. Content Specialist here at Factorial HR. Today, we are so very thrilled to have Vitor here with us. Born in Brazil, Vitor has worked and lived in the U.S. since 2017. He has 15 years of experience in human resources and has worked for 2 major multinational companies and has explored a wealth of different functions within the field of HR throughout his career. His passions are self-development, people, innovation and creativity, transformation, business management, philosophy, arts, and human psychology. Today, Vitor is here with us to discuss high-performance culture in HR. But before we begin, just a little bit about Factorial. We are an all-in-one provider of software solutions for people teams. Our software features time and attendance tracking, applicant tracking, performance reviews, and more. We streamline HR processes, giving HR professionals more time to dedicate to what really matters, their employees. This webinar is interactive and we encourage your participation. If you have questions, please write them in the chat during the presentation or raise your hand afterwards during our Q&A session. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Vitor.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you for the invite. I'm really thrilled to be here as well, to join this session with my friends from Factorial HR. And also everyone that is on the call. I think before I start, let me just share actually my screen with the slide deck. And I just want to actually start the conversation by saying that I'm not actually the expert in high performance culture, and far from that, I'm still learning. So even having 15 years of experience in HR, I think we all need to learn, and continues to learn, for our entire life. So I really hope that this conversation can be really a conversation, and then you can, after I spend about 15 to 20 minutes, explaining a little bit on the theory of high performance culture and also sharing a bit of my own experience, we can open the floor to questions and to make this very interactive. So, take notes of your questions. Wait until I finish the slide deck. It's not much, I promise. It's probably 10, 11 slides. And then we go into the conversation. So I want to actually, Kat, can you just confirm if you can see my slide deck?
I can.
Okay, good. So that should be good for everyone then. And let me share a little bit about myself. So my name is Vitor. Like Kat was sharing, I born in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro. You can see this beautiful picture here. But I actually grew up in São Paulo, which is the next one with this, we call the concrete jungle. So all the buildings and tall buildings and everything. I have 15 years of experience in HR. I'm currently the HR Integration Senior Manager for Philips North America. So working in the integration of a recent acquired company of 2,000 employees, and that's my current job. But I have experience in pretty much all the functions of HR, with exception of course, talent acquisition and payroll. So those are the 2 areas that I don't have any experience, but for the rest, I can say that I pretty much, went through all different departments. I'm married. I have 2 cats. I don't have kids, except for, those 2 cats that are kind of, give a lot of work. And my hobbies, movies. I love movies. I love books. I love gaming. I love traveling and also learning. So that's actually one aspect why I was also invited for this call, because I was sharing some things on LinkedIn, and then I think Kat just found and say yeah, let's talk a little bit about HR and high performance culture in HR. So let's jump into the topic. High performance culture, right? The research firm Gartner defines as a physical virtual environment designed to make workers as effective as possible in supporting business goals and creating value High performance workplace results from continuous balanced investment in people, process, physical environment, and technology to measurably enhance the ability of workers to learn, discover, innovate, team, and lead, right? And also to bring more financial benefit. And ultimately, I can say here that it's really about creating value, right? Because that's one of the main focus of having a high performance culture is really for the entire organization be a learning organization and they can actually reinvent themselves, right? That being said, right, looks easy, right? But it's not easy. So some numbers and facts. Probably you guys also saw this meme around. For people that doesn't know, actually, this person is a Brazilian actress from a very famous soap opera novela that we call in Brazil. So it's Nazaré, it's her name, and that's the confusing face there. So just sharing some numbers here, right? Organizations with poor culture, they are 48% more likely to have a higher turnover, right? That's a study from the Columbia University in New York. So they study a lot of companies here, and they were able to identify, what are the effects of a poor culture, and really came to the conclusion that almost half of those organizations with poor culture, they have a higher turnover than companies with a high performance organization. In the other side, high performance cultures, companies with that culture, they are able to create 3 times more return to shareholders based on studies from McKinsey. So, looks like something that we all should, target and really pursue as a company to have a high performance culture. To add on that and try to bring more to the person aspect as well, uh, recent studies from Gallup, and this is probably something that you heard about it before, right? It came, I think, very famous maybe like 5 to 10 years ago when this study, like large study came out and saying like that only 20% of the workforce was engaged. That was pre-COVID and was like a big hit. And like everyone was talking about, well, we need to have, engagement surveys. We need to have like a culture capability in our own company and things like that. But still, if we consider the 20%, it's up now to 36% of employees engaged in the US, right? This study, if you go to the Gallup website, you can look for other countries too. But here in the US, 36% of employees are engaged. That means that 64% of our workforce either are looking for something, another job, or they are not happy doing what they do today. So that's one fact here that we need to keep in the back of our minds. Also, with COVID, this is more intense, future of work, right? But this hasn't actually started with COVID. It was a conversation before COVID. I know it's hard to kind of keep that in our mind and think that there was life before COVID, but yeah, there was life. And future work basically says that people need to keep developing themselves. They like flexible ways of working, work from home or work from the office or hybrid models and things like that. It also changed the relationship of people with technology, with other people, processes, and systems. So all those factors, keeps changing. The only thing in life that is constant is really change. And then we have COVID with all the changes. And then, boom, change everything. Everyone's working from home. You need to manage your kids. You need to manage, your own life. You don't have more like a clear split between your work life and your real life, right? And there's kind of this concept of integration of work life. So this is another thing that came and changed everything, right? And probably heard about the next factor, which is the great resignation, right? And one thing I want to call out here is not only about when we talk about the great resignation, it's not people leaving their jobs, right, in search for either meaning or a higher purpose, right? When you hear about that, always take it with a grain of salt, because the great resignation, actually, if you read some articles, it is also about the great renegotiation. So some people are talking about the great renegotiation, which tells that the market that we are inserted in is actually hot, and people are jumping jobs, either because some part of them are really looking for meaning and for a higher purpose, but some, most part of them are really looking for better paid jobs, right? With COVID, and here in the US, you can, probably, if you just turn on the news, you're watching like high inflation, cost of living is increasing everywhere, housing costs is increasing everywhere. So people are not just looking for a purpose. Yeah, we do have those folks, but most of them, they still need to survive. And how can you survive if you have a job that only pays like, $15 an hour or even less than that? So the great resignation part is about people quitting their jobs because they want to find something that makes sense to them. But also we have other folks, right? And people that are really looking for a better opportunity and better paid jobs. So just to, come to this environment to say that we are probably in a scenario that you are struggling in the HR department as well, to provide the best level of service to your customers, your clients, and also to look into the HR department. And you're probably seeing problems with people leaving your organization. We had, especially on my current job, we saw a lot of people leaving last year to go to other companies. And that was kind of the most, like the number one factor. So when I read about the great resignation, yeah, it can be, a change because of purpose, but most of them, like 90% of what I saw in my experience over the last 2 years is really people going to another company to either make more money, to have a promotion or something like that. So what it means for the HR department, right? For our own, let's say, environment, how can we strengthen the HR organization? And there is no secret here. It's about exercise. It's about practice, right? So our fellow cat here is just walking. So it's the same thing we need to do when we are thinking about strengthening the HR organization. It's really like it's not something that you can, buy, like stellar talents and bring to your organization. Yes, you can do that if you have unlimited funds, but that's not the case for like 99% of the organizations, unless you are like Google or some, large crazy organization that they have like tons of money. But for, 99% of us, it's pretty much something that we need to practice and develop our own talents. So the first thing I want to highlight here is that always starts with me, right? So some things that for me is important and my own journey tells me that it is a good path forward is really about, being more self-aware, to be someone that can reflect on your own failures and your success. You need to celebrate, right? You need to have empathy. You need to be responsible. And most importantly, to be adaptable. So this is one aspect for me that is something that will drive you forward. And if you read in recent studies, you can see that the self-awareness is being more and more considered a key factor of leadership. Companies with self-aware leaders are more likely to have a better outcome in terms of profit, in terms of purpose, in terms of, employee engagement. So this is one thing that needs to start with us in HR, right? Because we are the role models that we can actually bring this to the business and help them also see, okay, there is a different way and we need to be more human in our approach and really be that person that can reflect and, think about, the changes that are coming with COVID and the future of work. The other point that I want to bring it out here is the mindset piece, right? So Carol Dweck, if you read the book about this, about having a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. The only thing I would call out here is that when you think about and if you read the book and you're going to see like, the fixed mindset is someone that is more entitled. So let's say you think you are great at math, I'm a genius, and anything that might put that, title at risk will make you stop growing. And then the other part, the growth mindset, is someone that thinks that everything can be kind of improved if you practice, right? I know this is something that maybe for some people might be like, ah, that doesn't sound right. Because, for instance, if I play soccer, right? Let's take to my own example as Brazilian, right? Like number one sport in Brazil is soccer. I would never play like Neymar. No, I can practice and I can be quite good at football and soccer, right? But not like Neymar. Some people they actually have this extraordinary, ability, but we can actually be good, right? Doesn't mean that because I will not be Neymar, I cannot train and play soccer for fun or for my own learning or exercise or etc. I will not be that as good as Neymar, but I will be someone that can play soccer quite well, let's say. So that's something that for me is important to highlight. And also another point is like it kind of is an obvious choice, right? If you think about, if you have a fixed mindset and you have all these downsides and pitfalls, like who wants to be on a fixed mindset? So this is not something we actually choose, right? It's something that we need to be constantly in an effort, and that's why it starts with me to change that into a growth mindset and to think about, okay, I did this wrong, right, in my own company. So this project failed. Rather than labeling yourself as a failure or this will not work in the future, try to learn with that. I had so many problems in my career, in the beginning of my career, because I was tied to this fixed mindset and was like, now, for instance, one example I can give here. My early career, I joined like this multinational company, a German multinational company that were really strong on lean practice, process improvement. And I took the leadership in one project for the HR department. And that project was not actually quite well in terms of outcomes. People start falling apart, start to not focusing on the outcomes and etc. And for a long time, I thought to myself I was a failure and that didn't work because of my own, let's say, approach to the project. Rather than going back and looking at that project, okay, that didn't work, but what could I have done differently? So that's just one thing that I want to highlight here. It's okay to, not be perfect, and something that we need to consider as part of our learning journey, which for me is all about the process. That took me a long time to learn as well. It's not about, oh, I can speak English really well. I will take, this TOEFL exam, and now I have this perfect score on the TOEFL. No, it's not about that. Really, it's about how you can actually learn. And then during the journey, you can enjoy, you can actually have fun, and you can actually, have some positive outcomes in your organization as well. And the other thing is really empowering people, right? How you, as an HR leader, you cultivate an environment where people feel safe, psychological safety, to speak up. And that leads to more engagement. So if you can actually put those 4 items here into practice, that will take you a long way understanding how to create a high performance culture in the HR department. And I saw in my own experience, working for those 2 large multinational companies, it is something that we often neglect and kind of just try to say, okay, I have this pressure, I need to deliver on my targets. Let's focus on the go, go, go. And yeah, sometimes you need just to stop and do kind of have a step back to reflect. And then moving to the second piece, right, that I think it's important is really to understand the business needs. As an HR professional, we need to talk the language of the business. And you probably say like, oh, again, this talk the language of the business. But what I mean by this is really to understand, your product, your service, and as an HR person, help your leader to activate that business, that product, that service on a people perspective. So, for instance, what are the capabilities you need in the business? What are the talents that you need in the business? But if you as an HR professional, you're not thinking in those terms and you're probably thinking about, oh, I have this talent management process and then I need to have like 100 deployed to 100% of the organization. Or I have this talent review, the performance management, and I need to ensure that all employees have a rating. Yeah, that's important too. we need to do the basics. But also the next step is to think about as an HR person, okay, we completed the process. What about the quality of this process, right? It's not just about checking boxes, but it's also about trying to understand how that will create value to the business, and then goes back to the high performance culture definition from Gartner. And evaluate priorities and direction constantly. If you are really connected to the business, one thing that will be important is really to make sure that your HR priorities are aligned to the business priorities. So if your business is targeting to increase market share in the future, so your HR priority should be something tied to that specific goal, either by buying talents, by developing your own talents, by having a structure that can create the capability that will take your organization to the next level and increase the market share. So that's one thing that we need to actually always keep in track and always connect with the business to understand. And I just want to add here, recently there was a competency model for HR professionals by Dave Urich. You probably heard about Dave. He's like the guy, like the guru, HR guru behind the champions of HR, the HR business partner model, and etc. So this study came out last year. And basically what it's saying is that in terms of the HR professional of the future, what we need to do is really about, accelerate the business, again, talk the language of the business while advancing human capabilities. So you can see here that the green ones are pretty much like the focus that we need to have. And when we talk about advanced human capabilities, building your strategy in terms of talent, in terms of rewards, in terms of talent acquisition, even like HR operations, right? And then the other things that we as an HR professionals need to focus is how to foster collaboration in the business and mobilize information, right? Mobilize information in terms of how can I connect the data points, and how can I bring that to the business in a way that will show how people with strategy can benefit the business and bring more value to that. And then in the end, like the center of the model is really to simplify the complexity of our HR process, and also the HR, let's say, approach to the business is to help them to have a simpler process, a simpler world. And navigating COVID is not easy, right? Navigating this, changing environment in the marketplace is not easy. So our job as an HR professional is also to help them through those four main topics to simplify the complexity of the business. And then the next step I want to bring here is really to review your HR structure and capabilities, right? So what I say here is really to think about, how we want to move forward in the future, right? And I like this quote from Alan Kay. The best way to predict the future is really to invent it. So if you are not thinking about how you can change your HR department to be future proof, you need to start thinking about this because it is something really important. And some provocative thoughts that I can actually bring here is really to think HR as a service, this mentality to have the customer first. So sometimes we are caught up in HR trying to push our processes, trying to, like I said, uh, managers, you need to complete your performance appraisal, or you need to complete your talent management. You need to nominate your successors, right? And we don't think about, wait a second, is this really what will create value to the business? Should I maybe change my process? Should I reconsider some of the things that I'm driving here? So this is the HR as a service mentality that we need to develop in the HR department. We do have some companies that do this really well. We do have some professionals that do this really well, but it's more in terms of how you build the capability in your own HR structure, right? So define how you want to be perceived. This is another important topic, right? If the leader of the business will come to you only to say like, oh, you need to make sure the payroll is accurate, right? Or you need to make sure that, we are compliant with local laws. Yes, that's important, right? But how can we shift into this business partner mindset and really to provide and to help the business see us as a department that can create value, right? So what's the value you want to deliver as an HR function? That's another question that we need to start considering. And really, it's something that is evolving and something that we are not perfect. We are trying to learn with our own mistakes and moving into a path that is more like trial and error, basically to understand how we can actually be more effective with our business leaders. And to be honest, there is no a magic recipe here. It's something that, again, you need to work with your business leader and see how you can actually propose something that will create more value to them. And then some things may work, some things will not work. And the things that will not work, you can just, adjust the course and try again. So create a future-proof HR plan. That's what I'm talking about here, right? So how you want to be perceived in the future and how you want your clients to perceive you. Again, and for that, after you have the plan, for me, it's about setting goals. So setting clear goals, right? And I like this quote also from Alice in Wonderland, which pretty much Alice came to this fork in the road and the cat was in the tree. And then she asks him, like, which road should I take? And then he replied, where do you want to go? And she said, yeah, I don't know where I want to go. Then the cat said, then doesn't matter. Each way, any way will take you there if you don't know where you want to go. So again, it's important of setting clear goals. As an HR leader, it's important for your people to step up and define a clear direction, right? So you define that clear direction, people will follow. People are desperately in need of strong leaders that are caring, that are reflective, self-aware. So that's why I'm trying to, highlight this message today because it is important, right? It is important for the HR leadership to role model and to take that as their own, let's say, strength. There is a saying in Brazil, very famous saying that tells that if you are the ironsmith, right, in your own house, you do not use iron. You have everything made of wood. So what that tells is like, for the outside, you're probably giving your best. But what about the inside, like the HR team? Are you giving your best or just like, oh no, talent review, this is only important for the business leader, for HR? Yeah, it doesn't matter. So just some thought provoking here and clarity in roles and responsibilities. Once you have clear goals, it is important to clarify roles and responsibilities. Companies are much more, effective if people really know what their scope is. And I'm not thinking here like, oh, just stay in your box. No, stay on your lane, how they say here in the US. No, it's not about that. This is really about like, okay, you are responsible for this project, for talent review. So we expect you to take the leadership, and then this person will actually take the leadership on this other piece. Like the leaders will be responsible for this part, and it's clear to the leadership, it's clear to your HR department, it's clear to everyone, to any stakeholder involved in that process. And then the second one, after you have clear goals, is about performance management. So if you can't measure it, you can't manage. Peter Drucker, right? So the set defined metrics and regular cadence to assess direction. That's really, really important. And establish accountability across the organization. Here, I like to think about the concept of extreme ownership, which came from the military, and there are a lot of people trying to implement in organizations nowadays. So some of the three most important things that I want to highlight here is that there are no bad teams, right? Only bad leaders. So that's one thought provoking, right? But pretty much what it says is that each leader is responsible for a high performance organization, right? If there is not a high performance organization in place, you can definitely look at the leader and say, okay, what are you doing to change this? And you as an HR professional, you can actually do that in the HR team as well. Sometimes we may say like, okay, this is something that we expect to come, naturally. Nope, nope, it will not come naturally. You need to invest and you need to have effort and you need to be this good leader to cultivate the high performance culture. Check the ego, right? The ego, right? So something that it's always important. Like sometimes again, fixed mindset. You may think about, okay, yeah, if I do this, maybe I might sound like vulnerable or, weak or something like that. So I will not do it. By my own experience, that doesn't work. I mean, you can, play a role in the organization up to a certain point, but then, after a while, people will start noticing, okay, this is something you need to improve, right? There is no bail here. You need to actually invest in developing yourself and then prioritize and execute. That's the responsibility of all the leaders, right? It's really to know, okay, we all have tons of priorities, but we need to actually have a true prioritization here and identify what are the 5 most important things. If we have like 42 priorities, nothing is a priority. So that's something that I always consider, even in the HR department. And this one is really to talk about being open to learn and to course correction, right? Some of the things that I want to highlight here, and we're just moving to the final piece of this presentation here to go into the conversation piece, is that we are not perfect, but we all can improve. That's the growth mindset in play. The compound rule, right? Any improvement stacks up and create a compound effect. Even if it is like 0.01% every day, that's better than no improvement at all. So that's one aspect that I want to bring here. And then change of direction is something that is a must in our world, right? We all know that COVID and all the changes in the marketplace, right? It's something that, we need to adapt, we need to change. There is a famous quote that says that during travel of a rocket from Earth to the moon, right? Only 7% of the way into the moon is really like in the original plan. 93% is course correction. So unfortunately, that's not entirely true, right? Because some studies shows that during these Apollo missions, they actually had in plan like 5 course corrections out of the entire, trajectory of the rocket. But it shows, right? Even like if you have a clear goal, is go to the moon, you can have planned course corrections and you can change your original plan if that may be something that you need to do. And you know that, right? With COVID, that's when we all saw that the importance of changing our approach and trying to learn new things. And then we needed to reach out to other folks outside of our own company to say like, oh, how are you doing with this vaccine mandate, or how you're dealing with everyone working from home and things like that. So it's just one thing to consider when you set your HR plan, to future-proof your HR plan. You may consider that this is not permanent, but it's something that you need to keep check and adjusting. And that's pretty much my conversation. I hope I can actually give some, good tips here. But I really, like I said, want to open for conversation. I don't know if, Kath, you have any questions, or if someone shoot questions on the chat box, or if you want to open the mics. I don't know how that works out, honestly.
It's okay. Thank you so much, Vitor, for your presentation. It was really insightful. And yes, we do have some questions from our attendees. An anonymous guest is asking, what are your thoughts on leaders who attempt to present themselves as having a growth mindset, but their actions and responses are fixed?
Yeah. Well, I've been there. My own experience, I was that leader in the past. And what I can say that helped me, and I can share my own experience, is really to receive feedback from others, right? To be able to build that relationship. Because honestly, what I see is that the fixed mindset is something that helps you. It's like a safety mechanism that protects you, right? And keeps you in that bubble. Like, I am the expert, I am the best person for the job, I am, etc., etc., etc. Which, okay, that's a fair approach to life. Some people may be very successful having that mindset, and if you read the book, right, there are a lot of examples, like Lee Iacocca, like the CEO of Chrysler. He actually took Chrysler from, the bottom to the top, and then he closed himself in this loop, like, and started presenting to the market like same type of cars, same models, just because it worked in the past. And then in the future, next thing you know, the Japanese came to the US. And then now you know the rest of the story, right? Toyota is like the number one company selling cars in the US. So what I can say is, like, if you really want to change that, can you find ways to work with that manager, building the relationship and maybe challenging a little bit in terms of, maybe if you continue in that same path, you will not get the same results you were getting. And probably at this exact moment, the company is not performing as it should, I guess. Okay, that's pretty much like what would happen. And then it's like the quote from Einstein, like, how can you expect different results doing the same things? That's insanity. So what helped me was really to have feedback, and to be open to receive that feedback. In the beginning was hard, and I felt attacked sometimes on the defensive side. But after you start receiving the same feedback from different people, like, you need to consider, "Oh, maybe they're right, and I need to change a few things on my approach."
Really nice. It seems like, judging by the comments, that a few people are dealing with this very same issue. We have another question from Marwan. How to manage or mitigate a company with a high performance culture while going through change management, especially startups. So what are your thoughts on this, on creating or cultivating high performance culture during moments of change?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point for me. And the answer is about how you integrate the change journey to your, let's say, high performance organization. Because one point for sure, when any company starts a big change journey or a big transformation, the aspect that can make that transformation not successful is people seeing that as an additional, let's say, initiative or additional work, right? Even though it's integrated to their daily, let's say, work, and then can create value to the organization. So what I would say is, like, if you are in this startup environment or even a large company, and you have that high performance culture already in place, but you need to drive some changes because some things are not working as expected, or you need to change, otherwise your product will be disrupted in the future or something like that. I would say the first step would be to talk to your leadership how you can merge your change journey to the high performance culture component, right? Because you need to really first acknowledge that the company is doing great, that they have this really great environment and culture at the moment, and you just want to actually adjust some of the things, and then you can use even like the analogy of course correction here, because it doesn't mean that the high performance culture will be in place forever if you don't take action. If you don't take action, that high performance culture can be done like in the next year or so. Like, you just think about Kodak, right? They were, saying like, okay, we are not going to invest in digital photography. And next thing you know, like, digital photography is the thing. And then that killed pretty much any company. BlackBerry, same thing. Oh, people would not like to use iPhone. Come on. And then next thing BlackBerry just took went out of market. Same for other companies like Blockbuster, right? People don't like DVDs sent to their homes, or this streaming thing. That's a failure. And now you see like Netflix, pretty much like the most valuable company, one of the most valuable companies in the world. So I would try to, in my own experience, that's what kind of helps. is to really try to not put the change plan on top of any other business initiative, but really how you can integrate and say like, okay, this is working, let's celebrate, but this is not working, and then we need to change and have the buy-in from your leadership team.
Really great advice, Victor. We have another question from Shabin. Please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing your name. Asking how to deal with leaders who don't take feedback in a positive manner. Do you have anything else to add to this, Victor?
Yeah, well, that's a good point, and I think in our HR role, or even any role, to be honest, we need to be more comfortable in giving feedback to people without expecting that they will take it lightly or in a good way. Like, people are just people. That's the nature, right? So when I think about a leader that is not open to receive feedback, our role as an HR is actually to have a clear conversation, like a really open conversation with that leader, and pretty much say, okay, this is something that I'm seeing and something that we need to change. If you want to be successful in your role, that might help you. So if you put yourself in that way of first developing the relationship with that leader, right? And show him that you're there to give feedback that will help him, it's a coaching, it's a mentoring or whatever, but it's something that in the end will help him to be better at what he or she is doing. That opens like a communication channel that, even though in the beginning he might say, like my own case, right? In the beginning, I was not open to receive feedback. I can actually say that with a very, kind of sadness in my heart, that I was not open. And then as time goes by, you start to receiving the same feedback from other people. And then you start to think about, okay, so that's like the third, fourth time I received the same feedback. Maybe they're right. Maybe there is something I need to change. So when I think about feedback, it's really about sowing the seeds and building the relationship. So even though that leader is hard in the beginning, moving forward, if he starts receiving the same feedback from other sources, right? And you can think about, as an HR person, do you have like a 360 tool where people can actually share anonymous feedback or something like that, right? So you're not the only person giving that same feedback. Or if you can actually talk to other people in the business, like the peers of that leader, even the manager, and say, hey, I was thinking about, John, and I see some things that are a bit concerning. What do you think about this? Should that be something that you also see, or that how can we approach John and help him with that? So I think it's more on that sense. But as an HR person, I think it's more like, okay, how you develop like really good conversation, developing the relationship, and even sharing the hard news, right? And not just okay, let's share about, oh, you did great selling like 15% more than last year, but in this sense, you need to change, otherwise next year will be zero or something like that.
Thanks. Vitor, we have another question from Cynthia. She works for a company who had never had a proper HR person. Finally, they hired her, and she has a background in HR and global, but this company keeps treating her like an admin. How would you advise that she changes this mentality?
Yeah. So I see that happening in many, let's say, startup like companies, right? And I never been on this same situation per se, but what I can share is that, Cynthia, maybe you need to consider, for instance, if we go back to that slide where how do you want to be perceived, right? is really to talk with the leader that brought you in, like the CEO, and understand, okay, what are you expecting of my role, right? Are you expecting me to just be the admin, right? And like do payroll, operations, and things like that? Or you really want to have like a strategic partner in terms of let's think about, and then you can bring to him like some ideas in terms of what is the structure that you like to see in the HR department. Because this is one thing, even for me, working for a large company, for anything that I need to do, I need to prepare some sort of business case, present to my leadership, and then, okay, that makes sense. Let's move ahead. Or that doesn't make sense. Yeah, not going to happen. But it is something that we need to start thinking about more in terms of HR. So, for instance, when you're thinking about putting together the HR department for this company, right? So what are some of the capabilities you want to build for the future? So you want to build like a talent management domain. You want to build like a rewards domain, right? You want to build like a talent acquisition. So those are, when I think about the HR as a service type of mindset, it's really okay. I have this need of this business because we are hiring people. We are, trying to grow in this market. It's a fast-paced market, and etc. And to be able to accomplish that, we need to have like this talent management approach. We need to have this performance and etc. And my advice would be, okay, so what is some of the things that you can do now, like 1 year from now, right? 1 year plan, 2 year plan, 3 year plan, and then have the agreement of the CEO really to say, okay, that's something we're going to implement. And I'm not saying you'll be completely free of the admin work, because that's a changing culture, change journey as well. But it's something that if you start showing to them, okay, you have someone great in your team. And I say you're great because you are in this call, right? Not many folks will actually join a call like 11 a.m. Eastern time to try to learn of a high performance organization in HR. So you have that growth mindset you want to learn. So what I would say is you can actually think about, okay, this is my plan, right? Do you think this makes sense? And then you're going to probably have the answer, yes, that makes sense. Go ahead. Or no, I really want you as an admin. And then that would be the point of the extreme accountability, where you need to take that uncomfortable call. Okay, makes sense for me to continue in this company that is not aligned with my own values, or do I need to look for something else in the market? Change jobs. So I guess that would be my recommendation. I don't know if you already presented the HR plan to the CEO, but I would start with that. And before presenting to the CEO, if you have some allies, that's really important to have allies in the organization. You can actually have some conversation with them too. Like, do you think that would make sense? Do you think this would be something that would fly? Maybe you can go to your finance person if you have a good relationship, and then say like, okay, even if I need to ask for some budget, what do I need to ask? Like how much? Then you can actually present the business case and take the conversation from there. Again, I think you might be surprised with the outcome if you change your approach to this type of business case scenario, rather than just going to the leaders and saying like, oh, I'm not hired as an admin, so yeah, stop asking me that, or something like that.
Really, really great. It looks like Cynthia found your advice very useful. We also have a question here in the Q&A by Jacqueline. She says, great insights in the beginning of the session about the Great Resignation. It got me thinking so much. What is being said about those leaving, but not so much about those who stay in the organization, and what pick up the work of those who had departed. What are your thoughts on motivation and keeping a high performing culture for the great remaining?
Mm-hmm. Great remaining. I like that. Yeah, I think for me, that's a fair point, because many folks are leaving. That's the reality. and then someone needs to do their job, right? And sometimes the company is saying like, oh, we cannot hire a backfill for this position. And then, yeah, Vitor, you need to actually work for 2 or 3 or 4, right? So how do you balance that? I would say uh, what we can do as an HR department, as a company, is really to be with the leaders and really with the employees and try to understand, for instance, you know, if they have the right resources in place. That's like the first, let's say, thing that helped me in the past to even organizations that they were saying like, oh, we don't have resources for this, we don't have budget and etc. I was like, okay, if you keep going the same trend, you're going to lose more employees, and then you'll be actually losing all your revenue targets. And what you can make the choice, right? You can continue to implode your profit, implode your revenue, just because you don't want to spend some money with developing your own employees or investing in people. Or you can actually think about, okay, I need more resources and let's change this. But as an HR professional, I would say our job is really to have that connection with the business and try to collect this, let's say, KPIs or metrics. Like you can use employee engagement if you have that. You can use like overtime reports. Like, you know, people before last year, they were working, you know, an average of 5 hours a week overtime. Now they were working like 30 hours a week. Oh, okay. There is something here that is not working right. And probably that's a time bomb, right? Or something like that. But it's interesting because the other piece of the question was about motivation. And I think one point that for me is important here is really to go back to the set clear goals and expectations with your employees. And even if there is someone that left the team and then this other person had to absorb the work, one thing that is very common is like there is no conversation between the leader and the employee to say, okay, now you have this additional responsibility on your plate. Do we need to change your goals? Do we need to change what's the scope of your job and etc.? And yes, in that conversation might come out like, okay, this is like a promotion, right? Because I'm taking like, you know, 50% more job. Yeah, but it's something that is a conversation that needs to happen, right? Because it's like, you know, you start getting like more and more work and you don't see the counterpart from the company. So next thing you know, you start looking for another opportunity in the market. And the current market, it's easy. I mean, just go to LinkedIn, right? And you see the number of openings there. Like yesterday, I read about some stats from LinkedIn chief economist, and she was saying like, now in 2022, we have almost 100% growth in number of job openings in our website than we had in 2020. So that tells something, right? People are leaving. People are not accepting anything for a new job. And that includes the remaining ones in the organization because you know you want to see that the company is already is also concerned about your own work-life integration, right? And not just pushing you through, you know, the limits and beyond that, like 100% of the time.
Really, really great. Thank you. We also have a couple of comments from Derek about Kodak, with your example with Kodak, saying that Kodak didn't fail to invest in digital photography. They even invented it. And they were a #1 leader in consumer digital photography measured by market share for several years. They were very aware of the importance of digital, and their leadership business model was never going to survive, regardless of their leadership's decision. It's interesting that he like has, you know, more insight into this. And then also wanted to say, mention Blockbuster. Similarly, Blockbuster was very aware of the future of streaming video and was an early industry leader in that regard. They developed an early streaming technology, which wound up failing for 2 reasons: that they chose to partner with Enron on the technology, and Enron failed as a company, and existing bandwidth did not support a good customer streaming experience at the time. Like Kodak, Blockbuster was probably too tied to a legacy business model that was going to be overcome by technology, even if management made perfect or near perfect decisions. Thanks, Derek, for your comments. Also, if you would like, you can raise your hands too for some of these comments. I might miss them. I'm so sorry if I do, but I won't if you raise your hand, and you can speak as well. Just a reminder. So, Vitor, what do you think about Derek's comments?
No, I think that's great, and indeed, they were in the lead of the market, right? My point about Kodak is, and also Blockbuster, right, is that as large companies and large corporations, I do question about the leadership piece, right? Because we saw some companies that were able to have a great turnaround despite of some decisions, right? And other companies that you can see clearly that the leader was the difference in that sense. So each company will have a different approach. But in terms of Kodak and Blockbuster, what I see as a great factor there is really their approach in terms, okay, we are leader of the market and we don't think we need to adapt as fast or to make the investments that we need, or maybe they didn't have like the budget, again, the excuse of a budget, to really make the right changes and to be a more agile company. So in that sense, I agree. I mean, Kodak definitely invented the digital photography, and they were in the lead for a while, but they were not actually open to change entirely their, let's say, strategy to compete with, let's say, Sony or some other players in the market that disrupted that market. Same for Blockbuster. They were kind of saying like, okay, we believe that video rentals, brick and mortar, like the physical place, will be around for X number of years still, and will slowly catch up with the streaming. But then in the middle of the way, you had the internet boom, and then that's when streaming became like mainstream, right? So some of the things that some leaders could have kind of, when it happened, change a little bit the strategy to adapt and try to survive, and that was not the case, unfortunately, for those companies. So they kind of stayed on this comfort zone, let's say. They tried to adapt some things, but was kind of too late, too little situation, I guess.
Really nice. Such an interesting debate here.
Yep.
Tiffany added some comments as well that I'd like to share. She was saying that you need the infrastructure and a budget, also a good mission, vision, and values, a clear strategy. And I think that that's really, really relevant, and it ties in so well to what you were saying, Vitor.
Yeah.
Just
well, to that, I would just make a comment. If you have the opportunity to read the book Exponential Organizations from Sailing Ishmael, he talks about MTPs, massive transformative purpose, right? So that's something that for me is a nice concept for even the HR department, because as soon, and I totally agree, you can have the infrastructure and you can have the budget, but if you don't have clear goals and a mission, you're probably just spending money on the wrong items and not focusing the investment on what needs to be focused. So I agree. It's something that, again, for you to consider, like when I say about how do you want to be perceived as an HR department, is really to look into, okay, what's the HR mission in this company? How that connects with the mission of my own company, right? The broader mission. So that's something that I would say, like, just leave as a good resource to learn more about this MTP concept. And you can watch probably some videos on YouTube too on how to develop some nice MTPs.
Really great. And thank you so much for all the resources as well. It looks like we are all out of time. So I would like to close this and say that a recording of this will be available I had mentioned it a couple times in the chat, but just in case you didn't get a chance to see it. Also you can contact Vitor here. He has all of his emails and LinkedIn's and everything. So go ahead and get in touch with him if you have any further questions for him. That's it. Thank you everyone for coming, and we hope that you enjoyed this session.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.